Question 1. What were the main topics discussed and what were their key takeaways? Answer. The main topics discussed were creative uses of AI for collaboration, developing strategies for effective prompting and questioning of AI, and the need for critical thought and feedback from AI systems. The key takeaways were 1. The need for action, experimentation, and cross-pollination of different creative approaches to generate new ideas. 2. The role of curation and judgment to select the most promising concepts worth pursuing further. 3. Using specific vocabulary and subcategories to refine prompts for AI. 4. The need for foundational knowledge to properly use AI as an augmentation tool. 5. Developing a graduated system of unlocking AI capabilities based on skill and knowledge. Question 5. Can you describe the discussion in a way that would get the attention of someone who is curious to learn about how they can find more creative ways to work and collaborate? Answer. This engaging discussion explored cutting-edge strategies for enhancing creativity and collaboration using AI as an imaginative partner. The group shared insights into training AI systems to provide constructive criticism, specific feedback, and new ideas that push creative boundaries. They discussed unlocking the potential of AI through effective prompting and questioning techniques that yield useful results. For anyone curious about the future of work and how to boost innovation, this exchange offers a glimpse into how human creativity and artificial intelligence can be combined for groundbreaking outcomes. Their key takeaways provide a roadmap for using AI in a graduated, customized fashion based on skill level and learning needs. Overall, an enticing look at the next frontier of creativity. Question 6. What is a tight, engaging, enticing description for this discussion that could be used as a lead summary for a social media post? Answer. Pioneers in AI and creativity explore how to unlock imagination through human-computer collaboration.
Hey, Drew, when are you coming to Toronto again?
November now.
Okay,
So
awesome.
it's the week of the 13th. I'll be there
Okay,
for
cool.
3 days. I'm setting the trip up this weekend.
It's a work trip. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a work trip, but I'm not at work forever. So
Nice. All right. Well, why don't you set aside an evening and we'll see if we can round up a few people on this end. I think Patrick was keen on meeting up. We should
that'd be
just
cool.
go grab dinner somewhere cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, I'll be probably staying right downtown near the office. So
Nice. That's good, man. Look forward to that.
can you pick me up in the RV?
In the, you know what? I don't keep the RV in the city because it's prohibitively expensive to just park at places. But you never know. You never know.
I want a big yellow van that says NFL on the side to pick me up and just like put
Sure.
a black hood over my face when I'm not looking.
And the
Hey,
it's goggles and earphones and then the black hood. That's what
That's right. Yes, that's true.
So I have a friend that had a kidnapping business and people would hire him to get kidnapped. And like he would do things like his insurance company would deal with your insurance company to figure out like the broken bone policy and like how far you might want to go. And different people have different ideas of how they would like to get kidnapped. And he's done crazy stuff. But yep, that's a legit business. You'd have like multiple people stake you out. He would just tell you, all right, it starts now, sometime in the near future, it's going to happen. And then one day
there was an outfit I used to get their emails and which was basically they were going to teach you like urban escape and evasion, but it involves like like kind of pretty serious LARP situation stuff, like can you survive in a city for 36 hours while being for the zombie apocalypse. But it was more on the it was like more on the serious side, like if you're really a prepper and you just want to get yourself sorted for this, as opposed to like the LARPing kind of fun. Wouldn't it be cool to see? And I remember I was like vaguely thinking about that, but then also kind of thinking like, I don't want to do that. If shit hits the fan, then I don't know, I'll just grab a couple tins of the tins of the mackerel that I keep in the pantry and hope for the best. Hey, Will, you're back. We figured it out. But I'm curious what your bit of advice was going to be.
No advice.
Oh,
I said just don't buy $4 cables.
Just don't buy. Yeah, that's basically concluded. This is the stupid.
Well, I was gonna suggest, because I spent a lot of time in Camus and with audio engineers, that if you got shit shielding, it's not gonna help your high end equipment.
No, it's the weakest link theory, isn't
If
it?
anything, the shitter the shielding, the more sensitive your high end equipment becomes.
Yeah,
But that was
yeah.
what I was going to suggest. Just turn off your camera and then figure out if that shit cable was the cause.
It's the one shit cable, and actually, now that I'm looking at the one shit cable is incredibly long as well. That doesn't help, and it's in a coil, so it's basically just like an antenna.
Well, you could be an antenna designer. That would be good. That would be good.
I love that. I love that work when I was in undergrad, double E. Like that stuff was just because it was like a mix of theoretical physics stuff and Faraday's law and all these kinds of things, and then there was just the the craft, real craft, because it's kind of like, well, this kind of arrangement or geometry works better for these kinds of things, and you could just build stuff and test
Yeah.
it.
Well, the keep out zone for antennas at Motorola used to be 12 millimeters, which is that's like a continent in today's terms. So yeah, things are very
Yeah.
sensitive.
Yeah. The Nokia antenna engineers. I remember going into when I was in one of the times I was in Finland, I went into one of the it was like I feel like it was in a basement, and it was the room. It was almost like hermetically sealed, but like not celebrated. But it was the room where essentially they did all the research for uh, the early cellular networks like CDMA. Like that's where that's where it was made. And I don't know. I felt it was kind of special. I think I have a photo of it someplace, but it also seemed like a little bit slightly sad because it wasn't, this is where it happened. There was no gold plaque with the multi-syllabic name of some Finnish engineer who's now retired to their reindeer farm. Hey Thomas, should we talk about Super Seminar?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. What do you want to talk about?
Um, so as you guys know, actually, I think so. It's great that Will's here because
Yeah.
I think whenever you hear, so Will was here. When was that? Like maybe was that a couple months ago? Feels like it was a week or two ago. It's longer than that.
Probably last year, to be very honest with you.
No.
Oh,
When
you mean
we
in
sat down,
LA? Oh,
yeah,
last month.
we
Yeah,
sat
last
down in
month.
Deus. Yeah, last
Beginning of July. It was end of June, July.
yeah. So Will sends me a note on the day, like in the morning, I think it was like, hey, do you want to meet for coffee at Deus at like 11:15? It was like very so specific that I was like, yeah, and I think it might have been a Friday. And so I went and we met, and I spaced out, and so I was like, oh my God, I'm supposed to meet Will, and it was like 12 minutes after, and so embarrassingly, like I got in my car to basically drive like 4 blocks, but I just felt so I just wanted to get there, and I knew, and I was bringing Chewy the dog. You bring Chewy the dog, and like a 15-minute walk ends up being like an hour and a half. It's like, no, this way. And so I remember I pulled up to the corners of Venice and Lincoln, and I looked to the left, and there was Will getting ready to cross the street to go to Dea's. And so I think I honked the horn. I was like, hey. And so we met there at this cafe and just started talking, and I can't remember, we talked about a ton of stuff, and I think it felt to me like in a beautiful way, like the coffee became more than coffee because we got lunch. You got me lunch. I got a bacon turkey pressed sandwich, which was delicious. I had it another time and it wasn't as delicious. I don't know. It was the company, clearly. And we were just talking, and at some point, I don't know, like we were talking about, well, the way I remember it, it's like my mind started going to like, what are the kinds of things that near future laboratory could do, kinds of to draw in an extended kind of participant in what we're doing. And by that I meant like, I think, you know, so everyone here is like at the 0.001% of people who are, you know, feeling enough of what's going on here to even show up on a Zoom call. And the majority of people are just kind of like, I don't know, ambling about. They sort of like poke their head into the, you know, and they kind of move along. But then there's some people with like deeper level engagement. And I want to find ways of like expanding that to people who are really kind of feeling into what's going on. And there are also people who would come, but it's 9 o'clock on a work day. And I get that. It's also 9 o'clock on my work day. This is work right now. And in that, I started thinking about how can you represent the value of part of the experience that is more that grabs our attention in a different way. And so Will and I were talking in very pragmatic, I think we were talking about it, at least it was going in my head, very pragmatic terms. It's like, if you charge more for an experience and bring more value, then possibly you're talking to someone else, someone who's a little bit more committed to the experience, because they're like, well, you know, $200 is $200. Like, that's nothing to sneeze at. Like, if this is going to happen, you know, better, you know, they're probably not like this, but it's like, then this is going to be good, because I don't know, this guy's been around doing this stuff for 15 years and he probably knows how to kind of curate a good event or whatever it is that goes on in people's heads. So I was interested in experimenting with that. And in the, you know, in the strategic plan, which is, this is my strategic plan. It's on the 3x5 card. Is to kind of, is to create these other channels. I refer to them as like channels. And I literally think of like my old Trinitron, Sony Trinitron that my brother and I had in our room. And it had like, I don't know, maybe a total of 6 channels that had anything on it. 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, sometimes 11, 13. And then you went into UHF, which literally had like a soft dial. You just kind of tune things in. And so I think of these different channels, and I think of like channel 2 is kind of like the Discord, and then there's like the podcast, and then there's your podcast / newsletter, which is kind of on a hiatus, and then there's office hours, and then there's general seminar. And so I kept thinking like, how if you go up, and like in like channel 13, I think is like the full-blown fuck off festival. You know, it's like South by Southwest, but for, you know, what we do. And I don't know if it's exactly like that, but that's the scale. Or Coachella. I like to say Coachella. And so I just started thinking like, how do you ladder up? And I was on a ride one day. Will rides bikes too, and so he'll get this. I was on the ride one day, and it's just this name popped into my head, and the name was Super Seminar. And I was like, I like that fucking name, man. It's got like alliteration to it, and it builds on general seminar, and it's got super in it, and it's like SS, and like, you know, I was just walking now with Chewy the dog, and inevitably you see like these beautiful like 60s and 70s cars around, with an owner. You know, the car laps the owner in age by probably about 30 years. And I saw this beautiful El Camino SS Super Sport, right? The Super Sport trim package, with a 454 the fuck in it. I mean, my family's station wagon, which we used to haul a trailer, kind of like Dre's, had a 454. This thing, I mean, it's just like, it's just nuts. And so I like that. I don't know, there's just a bunch of things I thought would be fun to play around with. But then I was like, okay, so what is that? You know, and so I started backfilling in what a super seminar would be as opposed to a general seminar. And I said, and also, you know, kind of running the numbers, and I was like, I like, you know, $199. Like, that's, I like that number. I like how campy it sounds, first of all. Like $199. Actually, I should have been $199.99, because I was like, that could be fun to play with as you kind of, you know, market it and do social media and all that kind of stuff. Get a fun little font to do it, and then it just becomes playful. But then it's still the question of like, what is it? And I think I asked Will, I was like, do you want to do one of these? I don't even think it was, you know, it was like the classic thing of like, the fantasy image I have of um of the Miles Davis quartet, and Miles calling him up and be like, "Hey man, hey Tony, Ron, hey man, I booked us some time in the studio. It's tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. You guys come by." And they're not going to be like, "Well, what are we going to do? Uh, could you send me the music?" Um, I don't know, man. It sounds a little bit sketchy. 8 o'clock sounds kind of late. And so I was imagining Will just being like, "Yeah, cool, let's do it," and just been then later on asking, "So what do you want to do? We're here." And so I wanted, so I'm creating things just for like a context for like just kind of cool things to happen, but you do need to plan something. And I thought, like, if I can get two presenters, if I get 90 minutes, which I think is about the upper limit that anyone's going to tolerate sitting on a Zoom call, 90 minutes, and reverse the architecture of kind of a masterclass, like continuing to push it against that, and reverse Thomas got. So another idea that I had on a bike ride after we're doing it, I'm thinking like, Thomas is like, we got to do social media and that kind of stuff. I'm thinking like, what can we do besides saying it, that there's a super seminar? And I just hit it. It's like, TED is dead. More alliteration. Beautiful. How do we play against the now kind of long in the tooth whole TED thing, which just these one-way things like masterclass, TED. I'm just going to listen to someone, and I'm going to get something out of this, some value in it. But for, I think the kind of person I want to draw in is someone who's like, who is finds incredible value in being able to engage that person who's on the TED, the masterclass person, who's maybe even feels like, I could have a really reasonable and kind of a generative conversation on both sides. If you sat me in a room with, I'm absolutely convinced this. If I sat if you got me in a room or had a coffee or something with Steven Spielberg, I think there would be a moment of just kind of like awe and just kind of like, wow, hey, Steven. But also, and I think probably instantaneously for me, it'd just be like, we're just going to talk. I wouldn't feel like the kind of like, oh my God, can I just get a selfie? Okay, I don't want to bother you. I'm going to leave. It's like, I got some, I think we could have a good, really reasonable conversation. So I want people who feel that, in a humble way, that they're going to gain something out of, and they're going to contribute something if they got in a room with someone, of note or whatever. And so that was a kind of idea. It's like, can I go through my Rolodex? It also gave me a sense like, actually, you have a fucking awesome Rolodex, Julian. Like, you should totally work that. And so I just started ringing people up and saying like, hey, I'm doing this thing at Super Seminar. It's there'll be two presenters. We're going to do it 2 times a day for get more coverage around the world. And here's the thing. I need you to do like a tight 20-minute presentation, no more. Because the bulk of this is going to be spent in discussion with the people who are in the room. And I was like, I think that will play. I think that will work. If you tell people, it's like, you're going to get a great presentation, and it's going to be short, incisive, and evocative. And hopefully I have to, you learn things. So I got to be a little bit more directed for the next round. Just tell people like, no one wants to hear your resume. They know who you are. Be like Steven Spielberg coming in being like, it would be a joke. He'd be like, you might know me from such films as Forrest Gump. Or did he do Forrest Gump? No, that was the other guy. Apollo 13. No, wait, he didn't do, no, that was Ron Howard. Ron Howard's in the room. No, Steven Spielberg's in the room. You might know me from such films as Jaws. And also this classic Close Encounters. And this little war epic called Saving Private Ryan. And people will be like, stop it. Just tell me something interesting about some experience you had behind the scenes or that kind of thing. And also, hopefully, the people aren't going to be like, what's it like working with Tom Hanks? It's like, I don't know, what do you want him to say? He's a nice guy. What are you going to say? He's a brilliant actor. He likes to do his own blocking, which I, admire. And occasionally he'll do his own stunts. But not anymore since the hip thing. I mean, what are you going to say? So I think, so that was the basic setup, is to do that. And so, and then in that, I was also thinking, I can't remember what point, Thomas, I kind of pulled you in, but I was like, man, Thomas has just been he's just been grinding on stuff. I mean, he's just been there. And it's the one project, Green Pages is the one project where I'm just like, this is great. I mean, it's just sorted. Like I feel like I'm not having to ride herd on anything, which is an incredible feeling, especially after having, you know, my experience with Amida, where it's like I had to do everything, even with someone else in the room. Be like, ah, man, really? You can't do it. You know, it's just have that thing of like, you set the context for someone to do things, and they just do it. So I remember that there was like, I mean, and I was thinking basically as we are going through it, I was thinking like, I'm thinking of all the things that I would otherwise have to do if I didn't have an amazing, I don't know, line producer or whatever. And throughout those, we're probably working on it all together, probably what was like 6 weeks, I think, because and I know I moved really quickly, so I was like, it's super seminar, we're doing this. Let's put some dates in the calendar. I remember we got to one point where we both, I think you were relieved when I said like, I think we need to push the first one off a week. I could almost feel you just be like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, you brought me in with like 2 weeks till the first one.
Yeah. So we a lot of it was prep, a lot of it was like reaching out to people, and just putting dates in calendar and telling people this is when it's going to happen. And I think the no one said no. They said and we knew this ahead of time. It's like you ask someone who's based on the I think it was Delphina, who is in France now. Yes, no, we're not going to ask you to do the 4 p.m. one. We'll find someone else, because then it would have been, I don't know, 2 a.m. for her. But everyone was like, yeah, this is cool. This is great. I love this. Immediately, it wasn't even like, I don't know, let me check the calendar. Wait, who are you again? So that was really encouraging. And just put the price up there, $199, $199. With confidence, I'll say. It wasn't even kind of like, I don't know. Seems like a bit much. Would I pay $199? The fact of the matter is, I probably wouldn't, but I think I'm a different kind of person. Because I'm the kind of person who'd be like, wait a minute, you're having Parsons and Charlesworth on? Well, if I talk to them all the time, like, what else is gonna happen? I probably would show up if the person producing it was someone who I really wanted to support. Like another community or whatever group. And it went really, really well. We did a total of 6 of them. So seminar 1, 2, and 3, 2 times a day, 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. And we had it was it was probably in that spreadsheet that you sent me this morning, Thomas. But we had
in terms of attendance,
yeah, how many people was it altogether? Because I'm seeing like, so seminar 1, 47 registered, seminar 2, 61 registered, seminar 3, 46 registered. So that's probably for both days. And there was also the VIP, the all access pass.
But yeah, those numbers are a little off.
Yeah. I guess the point of it is like
people total.
Yeah, there were people there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait,
the whole.
Is that right? 100 people? Oh, like adding it all up? Is that right?
Yeah. But then there were like repeat guests, That's how many orders there were.
Okay. And then there was the $50 student ticket, and then towards the messaging towards the latter, as we got to, I think maybe it was just with seminar 3, I was just like, oh, I want to add that line, which was always in my head, but I just never, because things just get like kind of bonkers, was never just to say like, we'd never want anyone not to be able to come here because of their financial situation. So if that's you, just send me an email. And if someone had sent me that email, I wasn't going to really parse for like, okay, well, can you send me like your IRS 1047/12, please, and I'll review it. It's just be like, here's a ticket. If someone gets to the point where they're going to ask the question, right? They're gonna get over whatever sense of embarrassment or shame they might feel. And even if they were like a grifter who's just like, I just want a free ticket, despite the fact that I've got a, you know, I'm in the upper bracket of median family income, it's just be like, I just don't even want a deal here. Just take a ticket and feel miserable about yourself. And so the other thing is that I said this and I meant it, so I didn't just say it and I'm changing my mind. But we haven't run the numbers. Is that my what we're going to do is basically there'd be like a net profit share with the speakers, so the speakers actually get paid. Now it's not, as I like to say, it's not G-Wagon money, and it might be like an Amazon toaster oven money, but it's something, and I want to represent value back to them. So it's like, this is, people are here for you. And I'm not, not yet at Coachella, but when I get to Coachella, yeah, send me your rider, fresh cut sushi in the back, freshly tuned piano, whatever you need to do something beautiful. And that's part of the Jiml experiment of like, that I think we're doing on the economic side of things, which is like, how do you circulate value? So I guess I'm not, I have to work, like I have to earn. And I'm just fortunate that most of the things that I love to do anyway are also these things. So, when I say like, near future laboratory, is going to split it. Like near future laboratory means like, oh, this is cool. So I get to put on more things like this because I can afford to take the time to do more things like this. And then there's a revenue share with Thomas as well as the line producer. Again, Thomas, I know you're looking at that G-Wagon. You might want to think twice about that.
I can't afford a garage in San Francisco. I might just fix my bike.
So I was really excited about that. And then, in it was just thinking of like these other ones. So we've got a list of other super seminars that would be great topics. Again, like drawing from people in the community. So leaning on JMO to help me produce a, what do you call it? Solar punk one. Find me the people, like who can we bring in on that? And I want to do one on the small operators. So people who have a small creative studio, talk about what that's like and how you set it up, and the minutia, all the stuff that never really gets talked about. When people say like, follow your passion, you're like, fuck you, what does that mean? How much does that cost? What's the monthly outlay? What kind of, should I use Klaviyo, Omnisend, or ActiveCampaign for my marketing?
So it was well attended?
Yeah.
Cool.
I was totally excited. And the
That's great.
discussions that happen, people getting in there.
Mhm. That's super.
In practice, how do you feel like it felt different for you or for the participants based on the super seminar price tag? Like what do you think? Because one of the things that springs to mind is that organizationally, it's at a price that probably people would have tended to expense at organizations if they're at it, which would also mean that they would be asked to answer for it, which would probably actually just mean that they need to write up what it was and what it did for them in a way where if it's just 20 or 40 bucks, they might have just done it and taken the time. So I'm curious, like what were the differences that you feel through the process of it that sprang from the price difference?
I feel like we saw new faces than folks that come to the general seminars. I don't know. Julian could probably speak on that, but I was talking to someone. I met with this woman who lives in San Francisco who's like a part of this, and also the Design Futures Initiative, Nina Gregg. And she was like, she couldn't come, but she was like, first she was like, you should charge more because a lot of these folks are going to expense it. And, people have budgets for this to, I think, Brandel, you've mentioned this, like, you get a certain amount of money every year from your employer to spend on these types of events. And she was like, yeah, like the only annoying part is expensing it, but I think it kind of opens up a new door for the audience and who could attend, which I think is, just spreading the tentacles of this thing to new folks. So I think that was like I think that inherently creates like a different audience. And there were only a select few moments of silence during the Q&As.
Silence is okay.
Yeah. No, it was okay. And you told everyone to luxuriate in it. But it wasn't like, it wasn't like people were definitely engaged. And that was great.
So to your point, I thought Thomas was going to say this because he's been working so hard on it. Is we're putting together basically like a Drew. Why don't they say this in like police shows? It's like I got Drew's jacket. It's 4 inches thick. Look at this guy. He's got all kinds of. We're putting together like a jacket of like of essentially what I want. Thomas started creating. Well, he created essentially like the summary takeaway as a document, a PDF. And we were just going back and forth this morning, and I was saying like I think we should also include the transcript. And also I want to include, without trying to be cheeky about it, being very direct, it's like, here's what ChatGPT has to say about it. So you have like these 3 levels of like, so Thomas, we went through and it was, I felt like he was putting his grad school, like critical analysis skills to work by actually essentially writing up from his notes. So he took notes, with a thing during it. And so then you get that, which is amazing. So you get good, young, clear-headed brain analysis, and you get, and then I've got it in DaVinci over there on the other screen, the recording, like barely not annotated at all. It's got fun bumper in the beginning and the end with the sounds that computers make in movies like war games when stuff goes across the screen. For some reason, I've never heard my computer make that noise. And so you would get a package of stuff. And Randall, when you were describing that point, it's like, yeah, I remember in Nokia, I never did this because I hate it when people who I don't like tell me what to do. I just don't do it. When I get approved, I don't even think I really asked for approval. I did it and just submit expenses because it's like, I know what's good for the team. God, I'm a terrible employee. I'd be like, I'm going to South by Southwest. Oh, well, if you go, then when you come back, could you give a presentation to the team? And the first thing went through my head, it's like, if they're so interested in it, they should get off their ass and go to these things, because they're all just sitting in the studio doing, just isolated in their bubbles. So now I'm going to go forth and bring back knowledge from the new world. It's like, that's not how it works. That's not what I said, but that's what I thought. Like, get out of the studio. It was my thing. But I get that. So maybe that becomes another, what do they call it? KSP, when we market it, to say comes with a box of stuff, however you say it. You get a bunch of stuff on the other side of it.
Yeah, that's a nice
Yeah,
value
it
add.
sort of renders it to be a more legible artifact for the context that people are in, and if they have things that they can kind of show in ways that they can seem smart to the people that they report to, that's a uniquely important sort of dimension of why they might chase the expensing money. So yeah, awesome. That sounds really cool. I mean, yeah, I was like, oh, I'm gonna, like, because I've been just paying it every time I've done those things. It's just been out of pocket. I haven't expensed anything, and I'm like, oh, $200. I don't know if I would pay that myself or if I have to start asking folks for it. But yeah, like it's the easiest thing in the world for people to do that. Like, I'm going to go to ACM West, and that's like $1,000. But part of it is because it's understood to be this thing already run by ACM.
Right.
But yeah, like it's easy, and if it's sort of if you start seeing it that way, and can see value in seeing it that way, then I think it's a really, really productive way to go.
Yeah.
Step is
Yeah.
renting a venue, getting it off Zoom.
I do want to do in-person things though. I'm having a try at Will and Thomas are coming to this, and I think I asked you, Drew, to the thing in Detroit,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Dre's coming as just like a little experiment, the in-person thing.
I should give a update. I don't have much of an update, but I got a bounce in 15, so I can give an update on my project. So I jumped in. For future fashions, and I'm just going to reiterate the stuff that the updates I already put in the Discord, but so I'm working on the back end. It's just slow. It's on the back burner, not my back burner, but it's just kind of slowly simmering in the laboratory there. And I'm still working on the the artifact itself, doing the flat plan, but I also created a G sheet and like a collaborative space where people can add in images. So and I know it's beholden on myself or whoever wants to join in to show run to get people engaged, which I haven't done yet. But there's a space for it, right? So it lays out the flat plan by spread by spread. And I also went through and pulled like the colors and the tone and like the high level archetypes that I'm seeing in all of the different images, thinking that can help inform image generation. It's by no means prescriptive, but I think it could help get it closer to feeling like the real artifact. And then I'm playing around with the idea of writing a Python program that randomizes the design fiction and work kit cards and like layering in like a randomized like archetype for each one of the ads, because the first 90 pages of the fashion magazine archetype are ads, right? So why not layer in the design fiction work kit to kind of help enrich what is actually in the ads. But it's slowly moving forward. I'll hit it on the weekends and I'll get out another 10-15 pages of the flat plan. Eventually that'll be done. I'm probably 2/3 the way through, and at that point I'll either start working on the InDesign, or I'll reach out to those that are interested and start working on engagement to start filling in the flat plan. But I'm finding myself comfortable back here backstage working with the props. So maybe that's my spot.
I think the flat plan definitely helps in terms of it's a nice constraint for other people to work within. Yeah.
I'm a big believer in constraints and creativity, and I know it's a bit at odds with the structure versus imagination.
Well, yeah. I think it's like it gives people a place to focus on. I don't think it inhibits the imagination. It's like, okay, I'm writing this. This thing is, like a lot of for green pages, it was like I would say, I want you to write an 1,000-page article. Like, does that seem doable for you? Which, that's not like a huge lift. And then it would be, they'd come and it would be like 2,500 words. So just like a starting point. And then like suddenly they were like,
yeah,
like, sweet, I just got 4 more pages out of you.
Nice.
I'll change the flat plan. Who cares?
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, and they're real high level kind of archetypes, like these are the colors that are on this, because I want like the tonality and the color and the flow of the document to be very similar to the archetype, which is March's Harper's Bazaar. It's nothing esoteric, right? But I want it to have that similar kind of like framing and tonality, and then extrapolating, like for when they show purses, I'm like putting down storage device, right? So like kind of extrapolating that into the near future, not being explicit, like this is a purse or, or a timekeeping device, when they show watches or something like that. Just trying to, zoom out, but still allow that. But I'm kind of glad it's taken a little bit longer because Midjourney is really coming along. I really like the regional variation option now. I don't know if anybody has used that, where you can make an image and then you choose an image and then you have this regional variation. You choose that, and then you can either lasso or block off areas of the image. It keeps what's not selected, and then it just makes a change. Like, so if you want to change the hat or the goggles or on a model or something like that, or the 6-fingered hand, you wanted to give it another chance to give a 5-fingered hand. you can circle around the hand, right, and do that. Or if you want more pockets on the vest or something like that, right? It's you can't be explicit, you can't put in another prompt, but it can take another run at it, or the background or something like that. So I've been finding that, I think, it taking longer once because it's going to be such an image heavy artifact, that I think that's actually a benefit. So
that's cool.
I think the area where I think I'll continue to hopefully constructively and generatively challenge you is the thing that I think is really hard. It's hard for me, at least. It's like, what is a future where fashion is not what we understand it to be today?
mm-hmm.
I don't know what that is, but I've been having actually there was someone, I might try to have another call with him. It was an amazing conversation. Lilith, I couldn't possibly pronounce her last name, who actually was Delphina introduced me to, and Lilith is in the fashion industry in Paris, and
cool.
Was sympathetic to all the kinds of things that we might talk about. She's like, it's terrible. It's like the #2 environmental polluter, blah 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 blah, all this kind of stuff. And what really got her excited was the idea that, I told her that you were doing this magazine, and the idea is that we want to use it as a way to explore a possible future for fashion. And part of me comes around to like the connection and relationship between fashion as an exploration of possibility, and in a kind of, in the old-fashioned kind of futuristic sense of it, like, things that are en vogue, like of a moment,
mm-hmm.
and where that projects to, and the way in which it draws in and almost defines, in the form of like a badge or a sigil, like a community. And I think a lot about my friend Kyle, who's founded Brain Dead, and how much what he's done with that, and how much more. It just seems to me it's like this is all about community, but they have material instantiations of that community. And there's a post on, I don't think it was on the Brain Dead one, I think it was just on his Instagram, where he was just holding a label, just a label that might go into a shirt or bag or whatever, and it just had the Brain Dead thing on, and it said some stuff, and it was just like, that's it, it's just the label, and not in a bad way, because I think I know him well enough to know it's like, he's not like, I'm not just doing this because I want to make a shit ton of money. It's like, I'm doing this for the community, and all the things that he does and he pushes into that are unexpected. Like there's a whole tribe of people who are just, he did like Brain Dead climbing bags, because he kind of got into climbing and he saw other people were kind of into it too, and he's kind of like, can I center things around it? And then they'll do events where there'll be like hundreds of people at a climbing gym, from the Brain Dead tribe, just having fun. Or he's also, I'm not really into it, but he's also into like the kind of LARPing pro wrestling stuff. So they'll be like, he'll do these things. He's like, hey man, you should come to this. It's gonna be great. Like I was sitting there and they were doing the planning meeting, and I was at the studio, and they're like talking about it, and just like, there's no way I'm showing up at this thing. But they were gonna like, basically, the event was gonna be at a bar, like a dingy bar, and it was gonna be like live action wrestling going on. And one guy was like, do you think we could get one of those how could we get one of those like lime scooters in there because I really want to stage dive with the lime scooter, drive it across into people, so that's what it was. Like it was a whole, so yeah, Julian's not going to go there because, knock wood, he's managed to get this far in his life without breaking a bone. Sorry, Julian. That was just me. That was me. So it's like a vibe, and then they've got the theater, so it's more than just kind of like, gold lame hats or something, stuff that you see on most runways.
Yeah, I've been thinking about like representing different communities, which is already starting to happen in fashion magazines, but doing it without commentary, right? So like elders are models, and so that so it represents like a huge that's going to be a huge community, like, and it has commentary, visual unspoken commentary about how elders are seen in this near future, right? Or something along those lines, right? Because you're speaking with images in this artifact, so you can't image and like a brand, right? That's the first half of it, right? So you can't be explicit at all, so it's all what's in the picture to kind of represent that. But I like the idea of communities, and I just had a quick idea when you mentioned the label. Like, to me, this is like it goes into that circularity, the circular economy, but it's like it's a thrifted fashion future. But I like the like, maybe there's different communities where they take their own labels and put them on thrifted clothes, right, to like make their own kind of brand, and that's the branding. But
Goodwill
that's the
did
extent
that.
of the fashion. Did they?
Yeah, last year.
Who did?
Was it Goodwill?
Okay.
They just like were sewing Goodwill labels onto.
I see Goodwill being a huge player in the fashion industry in the future.
Susan, you clicked the hand up button.
Yes, I did. So I didn't know of a good time to mention this to Drew, but it was just announced that next year there's going to be the first ever Native American fashion show here in Santa Fe. If you want any kind of information, they've just started announcing it. They've been doing presentations of fashion, I don't know, for like 7 or 8 years or something during the Indian art market, but doing a specific one for fashion, I think it's next May.
That's great. Yeah, no, I totally see that as like the real near future, but navigating that representation is difficult. Like, I would want to bring in people from that community to actually do the representation, like there's the Center for Native American Futures in Chicago or something like that.
And they would want to do that as well.
Right. Yeah.
FYI.
So I
just wanted to make sure you were aware of that.
Yeah, no, thank you. No, yeah, I'm a huge follower of all things indigenous in the media, and I try to keep as apprised as possible, but I super appreciate the information.
All right.
And it's nice to meet you virtually. So,
and if I can find the link to it, I think it was announced in the Santa Fe, New Mexico paper.
Oh, nice.
Just recently. If I can find that link, I'll get it for you.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And with that, I must bid my friends adieu. I do have a meeting with another designer for my actual JILB, but I will try to keep up with you on the Discord and pop in when I can.
Good to see you, Drew.
All right, cheers.
Thank you, Drew.
I have a question, maybe for Julian, but other people can definitely jump in if you like. Is now a good time? Excellent. So as I've said multiple times ad nauseum, I'm not a designer, I'm a researcher. And so I'm kind of looking for where I add things, especially in the culture of design, meaning people like taking an inspiration or several inspirations and then just, many flowers bloom in the garden. Perusing the manual yesterday, I realized that there's something called stimuluses, which are stimuli for ideas. And maybe that's where research belongs. Does that sound like a right track? Because if it is, I think I mentioned it before. There have been several projects that I've worked on. One that especially comes to mind that I worked on at Google, and I'm absolutely certain that they forgot completely about everything I said as soon as I said it. And I do not have the raw data for it, but I've got the presentations. So I have all of the frameworks, all of the product requirements. The thing that always bugged me about that project was that they had a particular technology in mind because they're technologists. This was a skunk works, and the way that technology worked meant a certain design. It meant a certain system design. It meant a certain form factor design. As I was doing my research, I started to realize that that's not necessarily the optimal design for this thing, this idea they were building. I've mentioned before that the general idea was how to communicate using only emotion. So basically it's one-to-one communication. The thing is, though, is that there are a lot of other possibilities besides communicating strictly by emotion. If you look at some of the messages, if you will, the payload, if you will, for a communication between two people, it is emotional, but it is a something else. And when I was looking through this deck, I realized I have got a gold mine here. I've got a short story, I have a novel, I have a screenplay. There is something, this is like Her, but it's not AI. And so I'm wondering where that fits into design fiction. Is this, and if I work on this as a stimulus, I guess one thing I'm nervous about is that I would want us to stay, us meaning whoever works on it with me, to stay within the parameters of what I came up with, which would be optimal for adoption and how this thing is used. We could go off on tangents, but then we'd be going off the res, as it were. We'd be getting away from reality, getting away from what I found would be optimal, which, I guess in design fiction, we should consider those things. But I actually have research on this. I have, here's the kind of messaging, male versus female, types of relationships, under what circumstances, different kinds of contexts. I have all of that. And I'm kind of scared to even start because it's so huge. It could lead to lots of different kinds of imaginings. And I wonder where it fits in using a design fiction methodology, if you will. Thoughts? I know without presenting these.
I think that I get where you're coming from. I think you just got to start making things, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's just like writing 100 words of the idea. Maybe it's like sketching something with crayons on a piece of paper. When you're like, what you're saying, I think applies to like everything. Like everything is big, everything is unwieldy, everything has a ton of research that's gone into it. That this is a problem that I think everyone deals with. And like the way to figure out your kind of piece of it is to start just like messing with it and finding what parts resonate with you and trusting that the parts that resonate with you will resonate with others. Because, we're all dealing with like really big topics.
Yes.
And the people
that's
who
exactly right, Thomas, that this is a scope issue. It just feels so big.
Yeah. So you just got
a lot of different directions.
Right. And so by starting to make and just moving forward, I think you can find your scope. You can just do like quick. I just started school this week, and our first project for our thesis, and I'm exploring the media and entertainment industry. The first project they're having us do is do our thesis in a week.
Whoa.
They're like, you just have to make something. Just make something and present it. And it has to be a thing. It can't be research. It can't be words. It has to be an artifact. It has to be a thing. And the reason is because you'll learn a lot more by actually making things and existing in it instead of existing outside of it and being a spectator.
Another thing I would say about what seems to have been the most successful for near future laboratory artifacts so far is like the catalog and green pages and the fashion magazine and solar punk ABCs. They're all really broad. They have the ability to touch a lot of different dimensions and aspects of it without having to go too deep into any one of them. You mentioned something like a screenplay. A screenplay is a single very deep thing to do and a very deep treatment. And I think it's tempting to resolve and polish something, particularly if you've been in somewhere like big tech. I think it's something that I would exhort anybody to do with a body like this. Of work to kind of draw from is to just try to paint as many different pictures with that palette as possible in order, and I think that's something that doing your thesis in a week also sort of achieves, is like doing one, like, because if you were to do a thesis every week, then you'd get a lot more ideas because you would have to force distance between them. And so I think that would be a really constructive thing for you and anybody else to relate to the material to do, is to sort of paint as many different as possible pictures with those same raw materials in order to be able to get a sense of, if you wanted to go deeper on one of them, what would that be? What were the dimensions? As well as to be able to force, like, okay, so we've got that angle covered. What's a different one now? What is a different place for this? What's a different reading of this societally? What are all of the different ways in which this can be kind of construed? And forcing that, I think, is going to be really constructive for finding a palette. And I think that one of the things that NFL does really well is give people that palette, but also give you an idea of what you want, if you want to focus really deeply later on something to be able to play with.
I completely agree. And in fact, I even pulled all these archetype cards and I thought, what does the universe look like in each of these facets? Your use of the word angle, exactly correct. And I'm thinking, I don't know what the technology is. I don't know what the form factor is. I'm wondering, is this a thing that's embedded in a tattoo? I have no idea. But if I play them out in a lot of different archetypes, I start to see the different angles of it to different people in different contexts, and so forth and so on. So yeah, that's very useful.
You asked, the first thing you asked was about the stimulus thing, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Stimulus is whatever stimulates you. And so if I think, it can be research or it doesn't have to be. It could be just an idea that you had. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to really tap into your like maybe like a part of yourself that oftentimes might self-censor, because, and maybe some of that is kind of coming across where you're like, I don't know what to do. It's like, I think you do. There's something that's stopping you from doing it. And I think the balance is, and this is where it takes a lot of, possibly years and years of practice, or doing it over and over, doing different projects and that kind of thing, is to find the way in which you can create the kinds of structure that you're comfortable with that do not constrain.
Yep.
So where can your imagination luxuriate in and just be that's, I mean, and for me, it ends up being these, like, my favorite archetypes, which is product catalog, magazine from like an advertisement. Those are things that I find intriguing. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily for everyone, but I think that they're effective because, I grew up in a world of product catalogs, of magazines, especially, when I grew up, it was like going to the, there weren't a lot of newsstands, but when I did go to New York and you go to newsstands, just like, oh my God, the world is full of things. Because there'd be all these specialty news magazines, from the typical like Food and Wine to the, you make model trains? Well, here are 6 different magazines about model trains, where I was super into model rockets. And it's like, oh my God, it's like you would discover these things, and for me, it was like, it was always when, you know, I'd have my boyish attention would be focused on, you know, like another hobby or something like that, and you'd be like, I remember telling my dad, it's like, oh my God, look, like other, you like, it was almost like other people were discovering it when I discovered it. Like, I can't believe this. Like someone else is really into this too, you know, but it's like, you know, the magazine had been around since the 40s or something. So I think you have to draw from the things that where you really want, where you know, so maybe it's even digging deep into the things like I've always wanted to, which is what Drew said to me in this beautiful way when he said, he's like, I always wanted to be in the fashion world, you know, and so he's like, I want to do a fashion magazine for the future. Beautiful. And then that's where the energy and the enthusiasm comes from in order to actually do the hard work. You know, but what by that I mean, like, not just saying like, hey, I'm going to do a fashion magazine for the future, but, you know, popping in when Drew's like, hey, I'm going to be in the donut shop working on the flat plan. You go in there and he's like, I'm on page 96 of a Vogue magazine. They're like still 100 pages to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess what I'm feeling like is that I'm accustomed to working with use cases which get very specific. You know, people do this first and then that first. And what I should do is draw back a little bit and think in terms of people have the ability to do this now. And without explaining how it happens or anything, just talk about the world in general, and people have the ability to do this and it has an effect on their lives, and go no more detail than that at this point. That's what sounds right to me anyway.
Susan,
Yeah,
I've been in that situation back in 2008 where I'd wake up every day thinking, well, what the hell should I design? Because you know, a course where you can do anything. Fiona Raby once said to me, well, why don't you just look at the local newspaper and find the most mundane stories and also the most exciting stories, and use that as a projection tool to understand a set of people without having to get into use case and demographics and whether they carry a yoga mat and drink a smoothie. You know, not meaning to be negative on that level of depth, but that's a very specific type of tool when you have a very specific business and you have channels and products and, you know, a revenue P&L. It kind of makes sense there.
Yes.
In this sort of more abstracted world, you either start with yourself, which I think is what I'm hearing from a few people, like what inspires you, or you can look for inspiration. And a good old-fashioned newspaper is inspiring if you can get one. And it's better if you can actually get the physical things, you can kind of collage it. And
that's true.
And then obviously digital will just take you down a rabbit hole of whatever. And I found the BBC always had some pretty wacky stories. There was always a strange thing. BBC News. But that's just my perspective on it.
Well, that's an interesting idea to take. Again, I did some research on, as you say, wacky things, emerging technologies that I have no idea how that physics would make that possible. And so taking out little snippets of everyday life are present day signals, right? They are things that actuate that kind of ability or that thing. Again, without going into how does that actually happen, because I don't want to go into that much depth. How can I just talk about this world? So for instance, in the film Her, they talk a little bit about how that operating system works, but there isn't a lot of depth because they don't need to. All they need to do is show the effect of having something like this in the world. And I think that's what I'm shooting for in terms of level of scope.
If you look at,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go. I'll let you finish your thought.
Yeah, the storytelling thing, and I'm not a great storyteller, but I've had to learn it. But the really good advertising people, they say, well, we can't tell them everything. We have to create a circle.
Yeah.
Depending on the audience, you just leave enough of it open for them to fill in that gap. So what you're saying with Her is there was enough believability or suspension of disbelief to understand that was taken care of. So that's where using news and everyday information and projecting it forward can help people understand what they're familiar with and how they can understand what that world is, or how you can project a reality of people's banality or insanity into a future world.
And then if I'm sketching out that entire landscape, I can pull out part of it and say, okay, this is how that part of it works, or something like that. And by works, I don't necessarily mean a product. I just mean it functions this way, and this is how people there understand it.
I have some thoughts around process doing this. First, I did a design fiction audit of the movie Her, which is just playing it really slowly, frame by frame in some scenes, looking for clever set decoration and prop design. There isn't actually a lot in that movie, but around the operating system, there are hints to that world through the manual. He leafs through a manual very briefly, and you can pause and read some of what's on that manual. So, but they don't. There's not a lot of exposition around it, because we don't need that. We've seen what happens when Apple releases OS 10, mountain park name, animal name, or when Windows 95 comes out. Like we've been trained on that, so we can fill in the gaps pretty easily. As far as using signals and inspiration, so I find the best way, I think it's less about researching signals for inspiration, and it's more about forcing yourself to create something and having to find some source inspiration, some source signal.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do a thing. I my friend calls it ACDC, which is an active commitment to daily creation. And this is what I do with Design Fiction Daily. And I wake up in the morning and I'm forced with having to create something. Like I gotta make a thing, and I don't know what I'm gonna make yet. And I need to find a signal. I need to find some inspiration. In some cases, it happens very naturally. It's something happening in my life. It's an insight or an observation that I've made. A lot of time, that's not the case. I'm stuck. I'm like, I don't have any inspiration. And I have a few go-to places. I'll often just go to Futurology on Reddit, and I just scan. What are people talking about? What are the futurists talking about, but not actually exploring. And I think that's the other thing about research. Research is like filling the glass, and creation is emptying the glass, and you need to empty the glass before you can fill it up again. And I think that's the idea, is that there's a lot of people who are doing too much research, but not enough. The glass is just getting full and full and full, and it's overflowing. And then all of this stuff that you're putting in the glass is just is overflowing and getting wasted. It's never actually being poured out and into something. And I think that the creation of stuff is important, whether it's scribbling thoughts in a notebook or expanding on where this signal could go. Observing the signal is one thing, but exploring the signal is an entirely other thing. And I have a technique that I use, which is similar to, I don't know if you know Jim Dater's 4 generic futures.
Yes.
Yeah. So I do similar. It's just my three ones. It's like, wouldn't this be cool if, wouldn't it suck if, or wouldn't it be fucking crazy if? Those are the 3 questions I ask on every signal. And I just try to figure out, like, what's the positive, what's the negative, and what's the wacky. And I always try to go on wacky. Wacky is just the fun place to play. That's the more, that would be closer to the transformative trajectory that Jim Dater talks about. And it's just doing that, the good, the bad, and the weird. And if you explore that and give just a cursory think about it, then that becomes the inspiration. So you don't have to find, like, you find the signal, but you have to explore the signal. And the signal might not be obvious when you find it. It might be that mundane, the more mundane and daily and quotidian, I think it's the better, because now this future thinking of it becomes kind of weird. It's easy to imagine, futures of artificial intelligence as a whole, but it's harder to imagine the future of, like, I don't know, cat food. Then you start playing in that world.
Yeah, and on that, imagine if humans ate cat food because cat food got so amazing in the future because people are so obsessed with their pets. But that's the unintended consequence of the scenario that could go left or right. And it's a really silly example. So I'm not meaning, but I have seen pet food get to some supreme reality recently.
Well, look at. Sorry, I just want to interject really briefly, but look at how they art direct cat food. They put a sprig of parsley on top. They make it look so palatable that I love this.
That's an unintended. The unintended consequence, Susan, I think, is what actually makes that wackiness somewhat, graspable as well.
Yep. But there's also that sort of tacit sort of understanding that a lot of pet medication is human medication. So if like pet things of all stripes end up being sort of the sort of a thing that people are talking out of the other side of their mouths, so you have pet fashion, you have pet food, and you have pet education.
Yeah.
Well, something I discovered I did an audit of Children of Men, that movie, like a little design fiction audit on that one. And one of the wonderful little things that I noticed in the background is that this is a world where no babies have been born in 18 years. And all of the advertisement in the background, it's all for pets. It's like pets have replaced babies. So there's like the gap for pets on a bus at the very beginning, right before it explodes. And this idea that we've replaced children with animals. And so people have started to think about this.
And then
you can add
those animals and those dogs can use buttons to talk and communicate, which is
I love it.
Which is what my friend a colleague of mine is doing, talking to their dog with some dog language and buttons.
Before the cat food goes too far, was it District 9 where you see that movie? Where all the aliens just loved cat, wasn't it cat food they were giving them? Like they were throwing.
I think it was.
Yeah, they were the shrimp people. Yeah, the
Yeah.
shrimp people. Yeah.
People loved cat food in cans. Like that was their bartering chip for anything.
I like that. It makes me think of Mad Max. When I watched the original Mad Max as a kid, I remember being fascinated and revolted that he was resorting to eating dog food. That was the food that was there. And I feel like that's an interesting, interesting post to talk about that. And then, this new gourmet design fiction cat food.
Going off to the crises of the future, food is one, right? Food. We are at 8 billion right now, 10 billion 2050. We got Earth Overshoot Day last month, where the resources on planet Earth can't support the number of people on planet if we continue the way we are. So there is going to be this alternative reality around what is food and decadent luxury, as well as like the sad reality that, eating out tins and maybe pet food might actually be affordable for some.
I like this Overshoot Day. I feel like that should be like an annual holiday.
Did you all?
I think I get the gist of it, but yeah, please.
It was. I don't know where it exactly comes from, but Earth Overshot Day was meant to happen around 2020, but I think the pandemic created a different data set, and obviously we did stop flying, which actually had an impact globally. But if we look it up, it is a day statistically where the number of people consuming from the planet means the planet can't provide sustainable.
Yeah, I think you do it annually, right? So you say like if this was sustainable, then Overshoot Day would be just after December 31st.
Yeah.
But in practice, it's like June, or
and it was September. Last month for the planet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have overshot as a population on planet Earth.
Nice. How come there wasn't a party?
I think it's quite academic.
I think that would be a great thing to surface as like and I'm being slightly facetious here, but like that could be like a what is it, what's the blackout day that they have where you turn off your lights for an hour in the evening to celebrate electricity or something.
I just want to know what Walmart does for it. Like what is Walmart's Overshoot Day celebration?
Well, exactly. That would be funny if we do a global annual overshoot day, just to recognize that we have like far overshot what's going on. And in Canada, we had this magazine called Adbusters, and they created a concept called Buy Nothing Day. And,
Yeah, and July had a lot of
yeah. So what would be the mechanics? What would be the rules of overshoot day? That's similar to Buy Nothing Day. That makes people, as similar to the day that you turn out, the World Earth Day or whatever, you turn off.
It was the 2nd of August. So every 2nd of August, we have to reimagine, reiterate, imagine harder on how we have to sort of claw back whatever we want to get back to, where the Earth can actually sustain humanity.
Oh, I thought, yeah, no, I was just meaning like, how could you sort of, I'm in the advertising world, like, how can you imagine Walmart attempting to recuperate the idea of overshoot day into big savings?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I think
you went the other way.
There's the like kind of altruistic way of like, what can we do to actually make the world better? And then there's like, what's the way that we can just drive
it into the ground so we become more extinct quicker.
Just dig into it as a marketing opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I went immediately. Sorry.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the dark version of this is the quicker we become extinct as a species on planet Earth, the quicker planet Earth can get on and recover. Right.
Yeah.
And that's really
accelerationist Walmart. I love it.
So the acceleration story and angle isn't what we're talking about, because that's the awkward truth. It's so big that we're not going to talk about that. So we're talking about sustaining ourselves on planet Earth, including leaving the Earth so we can go and have Martian colonies so we can continue to speciate. Yeah. But I think philosophically you could go either way. Which is interesting. The Walmart way, and then the other way.
Instead of guaranteed rollback prices, this is guaranteed overshoot prices.
Whereas everyday value is Walmart's tag, right? Everyday value. Everyday value, everyday overshoot.
But I guess getting back to the idea of like, research, signals, inspiration, and action, I think all of those have to work together in order to mean something, because research on its own is just a bunch of bookmarks in someone's folder. It's got to be acted upon. It's got to turn into something. And I've worked with organizations where I'd be given tons and tons of research, and sometimes I felt a lot of stuff was over-researched, like to the point where like I can't do anything with this. I'd rather be given one tight insight than to be given pages and pages and pages of citations to things that I now have to do all the work. And I think in the researcher's part, it's like, well, what's the insight? What's like, distill it down to the thing that makes it valuable for me to act on.
Yeah. And I think
I'm glad you said that.
I think your like cup water analogy is good, really great, Dre, because it's like, you can figure out what the insight is by pouring out the water. And it's a way to edit out the research that maybe doesn't resonate. And like, yeah, I mean, I say the thesis in a week thing. Like, I feel like that's just how people who get paid to do this for a living and aren't paying a school a bunch of money, that's just how they work. They're just constantly making stuff, and suddenly that after a while, the end product, they have a release date, and then they have to like show their work. But that's like, they have to keep making because they need to sort through all this information quite quickly. But I also think, just based on our conversation that we just had, when you're actually making something, it's a lot less about being right, which I think is what research is about. It's about like, these are facts, and it's more about like humor or having fun or like making something scary. It's way more emotional, and you got to like figure out a way to let go of being right and like balancing that, because you talked about it with Her. Like, if that movie suddenly became about how the operating system worked, no one's going to want to watch that. And the people that do watch that are going to talk about how that operating system wouldn't work as well as like this would. And then the conversation becomes a lot, more esoteric and less interesting because
without defending or getting sort of defensive on research, I think the research community in design is having a bit of an identity crisis, particularly because of AI coming in. And to me, research is about coming to a conclusion, whether you've got 1 minute, 1 day, 6 hours, or six months, right? And I think the worst type of research is just a lot of information piled up without a conclusion or an insight or an action. And I think historically there's always been this nice tension between doers and people that want to collect. And the best situation is research throughout, design from day one. The two have to come together and start on the start line together, not be phased. Otherwise you get this, like, I know it, you have a team that flies around the world for 3 months and then you have 3 weeks to make sense and deliver. And there has always been that historic tension in agency land. It's less now because we've evolved, but I think that the meta on this is just, what is the conclusion? What is the starting point? From my perspective, anyway.
I've never had the joy of having designers come along with me from the very beginning as I do research and have them back of the napkin or whatever. And I've wanted that, but I've never had those kinds of designers. And
designers generally want to do that, providing the topic is.
Isn't that so? How come I haven't run into?
I can't. I don't walk in your shoes. But all I'll say is that yeah. The researchers can also sketch on the back of a napkin as well.
Yeah, I think that researchers are designers in a different way. I look at when I worked in advertising, the classic combination is the art director copywriter duo, right? And I found working with strategists, which is basically the advertising researcher, does very similar types of things, was more fruitful to work with them because you didn't have to wait for them to draw their conclusion. You could work with them as the research was being done. You could design along with the research, and then you ended up with this like a creative world building or sense making as you would start to make something on an earlier conclusion, an earlier finding, and then as the findings would start to resolve, so would the designs. And sometimes it wasn't about changing the design, it was about adding another element to the design to give it more richness. And the process of working alongside research was, I found, far richer than working alongside just another creative, or quote unquote creative person in the context of how it works in advertising. So yeah, not to completely bash on the research angle of things, but I think that whether the researcher is performing the action or working with somebody who's able to help perform actions in tandem is a lot more effective than both research and design working in a vacuum.
Yeah, and I've always thought of those sketches as being like hypotheses. Like,
sorry, Susan, I have to say, because I'm jumping out of my skin. I would caution you in two regards. One is to diminish the power of you to do this, and to stop fetishizing the designer, because it's such a broad thing. You have in your imagination what it's going to provide or bring to it. But if the fact that you have it in your imagination, and I don't know what a napkin sketch means in this context, means that maybe that's something that that you can also bring to it. I'm not saying that you do the work, but I think the expectation that you're going to bring a designer, whoever that is, into the mix, and somehow it's going to transform into some kind of magical experience, because there are a lot of shitty designers. You're kind of homogenizing I'm not saying this. I don't want you to, I don't want you to feel like you're thinking in the wrong way. I also want to say, like, there was a long time when I kept saying, like, I'm not a designer, and someone just said, like, stop saying that. And I think they said it maybe because I was annoying them, but I think also they said it because, like, look at what you do. You think just because you don't have an MFA that you're not able to translate ideas into material form? You've been doing that your whole life. That's after a while, I sort of had the confidence to say, like, yeah, I'm going to stop saying that. It doesn't make any sense, because I'm actually doing that work. And actually, you know what? Sometimes it'd be like, I think I'm doing it better than that person who got their, you know, sorry, Will, their MFA from the Royal College, who thinks that they're all that.
So as somebody who writes a short story that is a near future speculation, a designer?
I don't even, I would stop even using the word. I'm not sure what that means in that context. I mean, I don't know, someone who writes a short story, what do they call themselves? What have they done to you to shape and inform the work that you're trying to get done? Is it a designer, or is it just something that the plumber said to you that you're like, oh wow, I hadn't thought about things that way?
Okay.
I'm not saying don't do it. I'm also I'm just so activated by what I'm feeling from you in a good way. Just like, I think Susan is undervaluing what she's able to do. The fact that you're even here listening and pursuing this, I mean, most people can't do that. They wouldn't even think to do that. And I think most designers these days are, you know, basically they say that they're a designer and they're designing the work that they're doing is Figma in a 9x16 oriented display, and they're calling themselves a UX designer or
Yeah,
UX.
well, and there's a big discussion now about how designers in the big world, I guess commercial world, are order takers as opposed to UX designers who are people using their imaginations, people who are using, you know, reality, people who use their imaginations. They, you know, they aren't satisfied with what they're being told to do.
Ask any UX designer to imagine that the thing that they're creating in the form of a dessert recipe.
Yep, I need to find those designers.
and see what happens. I suspect a fair portion of them would just fall on their face. They wouldn't even know what you're talking about.
I would say, yeah, from the perspective of being inside big tech for a while, like I think there's a lot of folks who see design as refinement of something that they've been building on and building on. And there are elsewhere, and sometimes in big tech, but in smaller numbers, people who see design as sort of the invention and creation of new things. And I think that you really need more of the latter, people who are willing to turn on a dime with new information and be able to sort of decide where that takes them, rather than saying like, well, I've already got all of these wires sketched, or I already really like these palettes, and actually tacitly, like, that's all I know how to do is recapitulate these three key angles. And
we're getting into profession, right? We're getting into profession discipline. I mean, like, we all woke up this morning, we all decided some things. That's a form of design. You're making decisions. That's really what design is. And then there's actually then practice of craft and the cultural boxes that we all have to be put in. But yeah, I mean, no offense taken, Julian, but you're a designer. Sorry, even if you don't want to call yourself one.
Absolutely, and in context, I will, you know, very much so, and because I know that either someone's going to believe it, or if someone says like, "Well, show me something you designed," I'd be like, "Fucking sit down, man. Let's do this." And not only did I do it, but I'll show you how I did it, you know, and the context in which I did it. By that I mean it's like I did it no matter what. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I think just by definition of design, anything that doesn't emerge from nature has to have been designed by someone. And I would say that that most people by definition are designers. Everyone's designed something in their life, whether it's an installation or a hack to, you know, round the corner of the table that they always catch their jacket onto, right? Like there's all these little aspects like that. I think the like you talked about, like, you know, are you a designer? Is somebody writing a story a designer, or so on and so forth? And I think that the designer is a weird word. I think you hear the word creative. I hear that more, like, oh, I'm not creative, the same way that you might talk about being a designer. And I feel like that's not everyone's creative. I think we just get it beat out of us early in life in institutionalized school systems. But that would be like, are you talented? I'm not talented this way. And I talk about, talent isn't a thing that you're born with, really. It's just, it's persistence, perseverance. It's just doing something enough that you get good at it. Everyone who starts anything kind of sucks at it. And that's fine. And it's those who persevere and who go beyond that, that start to get good at it. And then they start being labeled as talented, like it's something that you're born with. That's something that's given to you, when I think everyone works for their talent. And some people may have more of a natural ability, but I wouldn't confuse that with talent, because natural ability without practice is just doesn't lead to anything profound. So yeah, I think the idea of the word creative is something I hear being used a lot, and I almost feel like the word imaginative could be a new word that is used instead of the word creative. I think people might feel like, yeah, I imagine stuff, and I think that might be something to consider in this, like, imagine harder world that we're kind of living in, to inspire people that you can use your brains. You're already using your brains. It's just, how do you choose to manifest what your brain does? And again, I think a napkin sketch is some of the greatest things in the world that have been created started with a napkin sketch.
So I guess I'm looking for imaginative people who don't just fall in love with their first ideas and work on refining a particular idea. I'm looking for people who have a pile of scrunched up paper on the floor or whatever, popsicle sticks, glitter, whatever. I want people who are willing and thrilled even to try different things, to combine different ideas. What could it be this way? Could it be that way? And not just the people who drill in on a particular thing. And is there a term differential? I mean, are the people with piles of paper on the floor that's been scrunched up, are they more imaginative than the person who's refining?
No, I would say it's maybe different type of imaginative. Chaos and structure, or chaos and refinement are, sometimes I work in both realms, mostly in the chaos world. I'm the paper all over the place guy, but I know some really, really talented imaginative people who have the cleanest desks you've ever seen. But
was Einstein imaginative?
I would imagine so.
Yeah, I mean, his desk, if you look at any documentation of his desk, I don't know if it was staged, but it's, that's a true sign of a creator and an imaginative human. Like, it was a mess.
What's the true sign? Oh, the messy desk.
Einstein, yeah. I think chaos, I like order. I like to have things, but then I think when you're really in that moment of,
I'm feeling vindicated right now as I look at my desk. Just FYI.
No, I think, but there's phases, right? So when you said, if I'm iterating, if I'm making something, am I less imaginative than if I'm dreaming? It's constrained, right? So aperture of the scale of what you're grappling with, and then you have to get down and actually then refine and do. I think there is imagination in both, which is what Ray is saying. I think we're in danger of looking at our navels a little bit too much here. We're all creative people. You just have different fitness levels, and it's up to you to figure out what your altitude is that you want to be operating at.
There's a thesis about innovation that predicates that innovation occurs because of place, not because of people. But you have to make a place where people can cross-pollinate. The different types of people can mix, and I think my creative studio, when it's at its best, has a lot of different flavors of creativity going on, and I'm sort of sitting in the middle stirring it all. So it's messy, but when you get into a specific thing, it gets organized. So
yeah, I love it, Philip. I love that. And that's maybe what the napkin sketch really is. It's about the context of being satiated, probably at a dinner table with some people in conversation, lubricated with drink, being able to do a nice loose sketch without that pressure of like, I've got to perform. And I think
well,
that's
also
really
the cross pollination. Like if
Yeah.
you're in line with coffee and you're a worker and you meet your president, and he says, "How's it going?" You say, "Oh, this machine is busted," and he starts to innovate on it. And whereas that if that place doesn't exist, you don't. I used to work on social coffee shop micro cinemas, so we were trying to make places where innovation would occur, just ad hoc, not forced, I guess is how you'd put it. And so I thought a lot about it back then. Yeah.
And then one step further is like, rather than innovation, it's just imagination, the places of imagination, and where do you have to go to imagine, you know, what helps you.
Did you go through an AI phase where you're just like expurgating a lot of ideas that were dream ideas that you got to see finally?
Yeah, I did. I typed in all kinds of crazy stuff to that, and also visualized a bunch of crazy stuff and got a lot of that stuff out of my system. A lot of which didn't. I wasn't moved by a lot of it, but some of them stood out as being like, all right, this is cool. This is not how I imagined it.
Yeah, I'm watching people on board to AI now, and there's this phase where there's all this, there's a period, and I notice it because I'm not in it anymore.
I like the being moved. That there are moments where AI is just, wow, that was quite interesting, and then most of the time it's like, it's not what I wanted.
Yeah,
or any tool like when you used to get film back and you were like, I just spent all that money on getting these processed, and I've got one moving image, and that's all it matters. I've just got one, and that iteration is interesting.
Yeah, that speaks to the hallucination process. Like if you throw a bunch of shit in the air, but you're smart enough to pick the right one out of the air before it hits the floor, I think that's what creativity, really sharp creativity, is. And that's why like AI is going to be powerful, because we will become better selectors ourselves, I think.
Yeah, I think curation is a big thing. When I directed the dinner party show, I don't know, a couple of years ago now, which is basically it's fully automated AI show that plays on Twitch, and I was a guest director, and I would go in and I would start prompting some stuff. One of the things that I and this is still I only had GPT-2 access, but these guys had early access to GPT-3. And I remember thinking to myself that most of what comes out of these interactions was absurd, with the occasional spark of just brilliance. Because it would say stuff that was really, really good. A few of them I stand out, but I can't think of it right now off the top of my head. But I think that's what AI does really, really well. And so that came up with this idea of like, I think that the role of curation is going to be really, really important. And as a creative director, working with a team looks a lot like working with in supervised learning. I get a young team, go write me 50 headlines, come back, review the 50 headlines, do some reinforcement learning, tell them what I liked, the ones that I liked, and then I'd ask them to improve and expand on that. And then they would go write 50 more and come back, and I would narrow it down and continue to do this. And this is just basically supervised learning and AI, where it took me weeks to narrow down several hundred headlines into 2 or 3 bangers I could present to a client. Now takes 15 seconds.
Right.
It happens really, really, really quickly, and it happens at the speed at which I can read and make a decision and apply my
that's the cool part,
judgment to, right? I know that is the cool part, and this is where I called out the idea of children of madmen, the idea that if advertising does embrace this, there'll be no more juniors born in the world of advertising. And what does that mean in the future? So I came up with this idea of like the curation director, or the curative director. It's part curation, part
Explain juniors.
creative.
I don't. I'm hung up. Explain juniors.
Oh, juniors, young writers, like interns and new people to the business. Junior writers in the world of advertising and commercialized creativity. It's always
Yeah.
it's your frontline young
I
cheap
follow.
talent that produces all the work,
So you're
and the
saying that
decisions are made by creatives.
juniors, you're saying there won't be more juniors because why? That's what I didn't follow.
Oh, because they are easily replaced by AI. That a creative director can now, instead of having a staff of junior writers, can just instruct AI, here's the brief, go write me 1,000 headlines. And not only do I don't even have to read those 1,000 headlines anymore. I can apply chain of thought reasoning, and I can basically say, I built a chain of thought reasoning called a crafts analysis, which basically crafts is an acronym to analyze the validity and the value of a creative idea for commercial purposes. And I have basically a group of critics that will analyze and reason their thought and then evaluate and come up with what is the best idea. And so that's
I call those round tables, and they work really well. Yeah.
Chain of thought reasoning in AI is super fun. And
do you imagine a world where juniors might think they never need to have seniors because they've created large language models of all the way seniors think, and then they can actually just learn from that and have to deal with humans?
Nice. Yeah,
which then becomes true second brain. It's like, I want the second brain of Dre, and I don't need him.
Well, that's the beauty of language
teaching. Some of the language teaching models are getting close to that, where you've got a noob who's learning from an expert speaker. And so that language teaching model could carry over to languaging as a senior. I'm really curious right now, like this points to how the doors for traditional apprenticeships are sort of changing and closing and moving around. It's like really changing a lot. And so what is the method for young kids to onboard into developing terrains, essentially, as these technologies and these spaces are so disrupted that it's almost like an ocean instead of a continent of information, because you sink if you don't swim. And so what is the way, how do people who are coming to these problems and are essentially noobs and don't have a map and are essentially functionally overwhelmed, and they're going to grab whatever they can and try to hang on to that and develop that into something that floats? And so I think we're going to see rafts of meaning sort of as people come to new archetypes for dealing with the world, and the AI is going to reflect that so effectively. They're going to seem cogent and coherent. And so it's a matter of getting these rafts working and in order and onboarding people in a way that gives them meaning and legitimate work in some fashion, because work itself is sinking, as these
I don't think that there's any reason to believe, to Dre's point, that the people who construct these industries have any reason to create the ability for those rafts to be created. To Dre's point, this is something that the people in the Writers Guild strikes have also said in the context of writers' rooms today, is that writers' rooms are being replaced with mini rooms, which means that there's not the room for these juniors to be able to learn the craft. And that act of selection is premised on decades of experience of understanding what's going to be a banger to send to a client or to put into a script treatment. And I've worked with enough young people with a range that have come from enough different sort of views of what education and training entails to recognize that those outcomes can be different, and people can end up old and still never prepared to be able to kind of contribute at the level they're expected to. And so I think that if there's a way for people to sort of come up from nothing to senior, we probably have to design it. And I think that it isn't necessarily or definitely being designed today. and it's deeply concerning to me.
I'm working on it, just to give you some solace. I call it the ladder from alpha to omega, and it's a self-determined ladder, and well, there'll be lots of them. But yeah, it's a problem, because how do you conceive of where you are to an inconceivable place of higher development, you know, for an individual or for a culture? And the self-direction, the thing I'm really fascinated with is how autocomplete finishes our sentence. And what do you get at the next level of AI when autocomplete can finish your day? And how do you have self-direction in a context where, you know, you're given 3 great choices for your next opportunity, and they all look great, but none of them are yours. They're all generated from outside almost.
Yeah, I still feel like it's a possibility that the entire premise of generative AI is fundamentally incompatible with the way that humans experience and develop and learn. I think that we're much more centered on praxis, on specific actions, and that our judgment is always tinged and colored by our understanding of the productive necessities to be able to have something even be present as a choice. If we begin to separate ourselves from that, I don't know whether the human psyche survives the ability to determine the difference between this and that. I don't know how else to put it to people, to go like,
I mean, is the human,
what does that do?
I mean, is the human in the way? In the sense that we spend our time with computation, organizing and wasting our time, and that's why big corporate structures are a waste of time, because people are just trying to find information or recreate information. AI can, if it could be your second brain, and you didn't have to think about where did I put that little bit of inspiration, and it could actually assist you or serve you, then obviously I'm completely like out of whack with where AI is today, but like,
that's fine.
It could actually be that sort of turbocharged thing. And then going back to Philip, I think what you said is culture. What the writer's room or the studio does is it fosters the values by which people need to behave. It's like, I see that there's a problem, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to tell you there's a problem, but by the way, I've already fixed it by the time I told you, rather than the culture of there's a problem, moan. 6 months later, the organization is still broken, right? And I think that's because the culture of an organization has created that behavior, and people just moan.
It's almost like, what does the group bring to the center of the problem? I think your word praxis is amazing, Brandel. What do we talk about? And so what gets promoted as the thing we all chew on as a group? And so if that's augmented by AI, that's a step up.
Yeah, I agree. And Will, the way you're framing it sort of it encourages thinking about sort of Clarkian extended mind, and I'm a strong believer in that. I think the challenge is understanding the sort of the scope and frame of what AI does as being instrumental rather than agentive, and I like having things be tools rather than agents that are acting, and how you kind of create handles and controls. And you know, I constantly relitigate this at work with people talking about sort of the extent and nature of creativity. But like, I think what I want out of AI is handles, is mechanisms, rich, multi-dimensional, multimodal directions in which I can pull, rather than sort of clicking a button and getting a really smart answer, because I then learn nothing about how that answer comes to pass. So that's what I'm looking for. And yeah.
I'm seeing like a graduated system in AI where you need to be a certain age to use it for certain applications. You have to prove a certain level of fundamental knowledge of subjects before you can start using it to augment. So first, it's graduated like a driver's license, but also you need to, once you've passed a certain level of high school, college, master's, whatever, is when you unlock the next ability to use it as augmented tool. That would be a really fun design fiction to play with.
Okay, so the ladder operates by having rungs, and you have to climb the rungs. So if you're in a maker space, you need to be trained on this tool, then you can use the tool. That's a good premise. But because people are so meritocracy based and scores matter, I don't want to reveal or show a scoreboard. I want to make the rungs personal and visible, and you climb them and you gain in power and authority, literally able to make more choices in the group, and also what machine do we need next? And those things need to be invisible, or they become a basis itself for idealism rather than actual in situ praxis with the tool, relating to the actual how do you control it and what are the implications of being able to control this thing. And that autonomy, that ability to push a button and have all sorts of back end effects occur, that's what technology does. And that abstraction boundary is super useful, because you can do your problem and stay focused on your problem and not think about all of the, but the problem is that's layering up to the point where we're going to be pushing buttons that have like butterfly effects all over the place. So the ladder is invisible, but the ladder is everything. That's what I'm getting to.
It makes me think of Paddy, open water. Obviously, you've got to be 12 to start it, because you can't go scuba diving. But that course is basically, you get your certification. You get your try it in a pool, in a safety pool, test it in the open water, and then do a course, do the next course, do the next course, do the next course, and you're certified as an instructor. It doesn't compare and contrast you to that other diver and make you feel
yes.
And I think that's the issue with education today. It's rote learning. It's about your test score. The test score does not matter, because it's actually the impact you have in life or in creativity or in whatever context you're in. And I think that's a really nice thread here.
One of the people I got to know well was Gio Obata. He's the architect for HOK Architects, Helmut Obata and Kasselbaum. And he was just the most modest man. And one of his principles for the company was there is no architect on a building. They don't sign their buildings. There are lead architects in the company, and they collaborate on the buildings when they have their lead projects, but they don't get to put their name on the building at the end of the day. They actually, he makes that company collectively work on the building rather than have it be an ego thing. And I think that's an interesting point to it as well, because that attachment to achievement and branding is well, this is where it gets to other levels of mind, like the Clark mind. You said, Brandel, how does ego itself localizes in a mistaken way, and is there other archetypes emerging in the culture that become a new form of language and communication and a basis for theatrical interaction, where we're more playful, and like that messy part of the studio has a whole stage on it that we can go simulate the future, see if it works, and then go build that thing, and I think that play is the missing piece. I go to theater because I think that's a formalized domain of play, but I feel like the ability to play breaks down as soon as you have an expert in the room, because they're going to tell you how to do it instead of let you play about it.
Well, as soon as you have an expert in the room, you should leave the room, shouldn't you?
Yeah, because you don't need to be there. Yeah, that's right.
No, I mean, this idea of an expert is an interesting terminology, expert of what, and then you can always get better. And then this idea of deference to the most senior person. Actually, ideas, if you go back to creativity, ideas flow fluidly from anywhere, and it's a collective rising and selection and moving forward. That is why diversity and true creative teams and studios and all the things people have mentioned on this call actually make it.
To me, there's a tension between
AI.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
They're making more interesting than just pressing a button and getting, a regurgitated idea or a regurgitated piece of text out of AI. And yeah, I'm not dismissing. I'm not trying to dismiss an expert view.
Would you say that ability to recognize the banger when it hits the table, and see the creative value of it? To me, that's okay, we're wrestling with two things. There's the ideal, which is the expert in the room, has all the ideas, knows the way to do it. And then there's whatever is actually happening in the room, which is the actual moment. And the difference between the moment and the ideal is vast. It's the tension between everything. So like I hooked on Brandel's praxis word is because that is so much like a chemical in the room we're reacting to. It's an innate reflex to see a good headline and all laugh. And you can't resist that laughter, and that has a tangible value that's eventually an expert will recognize as having legs in the market or something. But that instantaneous moment to me is the preeminent thing, and we need to honor the moment. And ideals rip us away from the moment. Ideals and experts and bigger ideas always take us away from the situation we're in, because they're, by contrast, completely abstract instead of completely literal. And that's the weirdest thing about this, because we're, as creatures, we're in the moment, but we're talking to an AI that is the most abstract. And so that conjunction is, to me, where the bits meet the table, you know, rubber meets the road.
I like to make fun of that Rick Rubin interview where he talks about like, you know, I really don't do anything. It's just my judgment and my intention and my ideas that I get paid for. I love that, because to me it's like, oh, that describes prompt engineering. That describes being a creative director for the most part. But the reality, he's really good at something.
You must want to go take a nap.
And you don't need to do anything but be there and be you.
Yeah. And I think that idea of being able to recognize something that's funny, insightful, poignant, that's really hard to do with AI.
Ineffable.
AI can, it's you can come up with a lot of really interesting ideas with AI, but then there's content out there that I look at that makes me realize, like, I don't think this can be, like, I couldn't see that being generated outside of like someone's brain. Like that that show, I Think You Should Leave. Have you seen this? Like, it's one of the most off the wall, craziest comedies that I've ever seen. And I fancy myself a pretty creative individual with a wide range of humor in my brain, and I watch this guy and I am envious of how crazy and over the top and how he just keeps going and going and going. And it's amazing. It's amazing comedy. And I look at
What's
that.
the name of it again? I'm trying to write it down.
Oh, it's called I Think You Should Leave.
I always think of these later and I can never find them. Okay, thanks.
And yeah, it's pretty aggressive, funny stuff, but it's a perfect example of like, yeah, this is only humans can do this type of thing. And you can't really predict. I listen to the AI music generators, and they're not great. They do okay type of stuff. I think they'll do a great job at replacing hotel lobby music and elevator music. But I don't think any bangers are coming out of that. At least not for.
I've heard some pretty good stuff. I've heard some cross-cultural stuff that's really amazing.
I've heard the word banger a lot. So is that like the 1% of the 1%, right? It's like the top. What are you talking about?
Like, bangers are there.
Yeah, I fully agree with you on the writer. The true person in the craft generally is better than AI where it is today. But 50% or the majority of us mere mortals are incredibly empowered by the enrichment of an AI tool. And then the question becomes is, if you do a large language model of the right data inputs, everything Dre has ever written in the world, and that large language model learns that, then it can become almost like a second brain or an augmentation to you. So it understands how you think, can pass the world's information, the neural net, and then pass it through your filter of how you've written it, to then take you to that next level. I think that's a really interesting aspiration for AI. And then from those models of Dre's and the other experts, juniors can learn through those.
What Brando was saying that I react to really strongly and agree with is that handles and buttons and tools. The AI needs to augment our capacity and become tools to us, not a synthetic thing that's absorbing and mediating everything for us. Because, you know, one becomes, in my mind, an armor, like a thick skin that insulates us from each other. And the other becomes a common set of tools that we can activate our environment in common with. And that was something I learned at the HIT Lab, Julian, where you've got a screen between yourself and the other person, 2 screens by the time you do it. And that I just think this is the part of us, especially, that is the most related to each other, and yet the technology is seeking to cover it up. Now they're seeking to uncover it too now. But you see my point, that sense of when that technology totally dissolves and becomes invisible and we're back in the same room, I won't have this problem with it. But in the interim, we're insulating each other and building layers between each other instead of building common environments around each other for shared and so I don't see how the thing can essentially bring us closer if that's the structure of the technology. That's the, but when you reformat it to buttons and handles and it's not so biofilm like, then I'm not as worried. I go a little crazy trying not to talk.
Suffer through it, my friend. The pain is the juice.
You guys
the pain is the juice.
Yeah. The intensity of the longing is what does all the work. Because I definitely want to hear what you guys are saying. Will, what's your background? I don't think we've spoken much.
It depends on what day you ask me. I live in San Francisco, from England originally. Half Asian.
I mean academic.
Always not found a traditional fit, and discovered design, creativity, and art education meant that I could find a profession in design. Classically trained industrial designer and then interaction design. But
that's what I did. You're in the same channel as me then. That's great. Yeah. That's why I feel affinity to your speaking.
I'm glad someone does.
Definitely resonates.
Dude, every time we speak, something beautiful happens. I'm actually saying that to both of you now, I realize. Just to
I think the whole group, it's nice. I really appreciate everyone on the call. It's nice to have this space. I happen to have, got the whole morning free, and I haven't been able to make it here. So I really appreciate you, Julian, for bringing us all together. And
totally.
It's what you need. I think it's frustrating to be on a Zoom call. Obviously, it's the best thing we can do, but I get it that if people are in a room, there's a transference of energy, and whatever happens, it takes things to another dimension. But the fact that we're all able to connect through Julian on this is great. AI is not going away, and I think us humans have to not fear it. And if anything, we can somehow influence and shape it. Some of us might even create companies around it. Others will be on the receiving end. My 13-year-old's going to school today to talk about the merits of AI, and all they're talking about is can they use it in classroom and cheating in essays. And I said, well, your teachers are wrong. They need to teach how you put good inputs into AI to get a result, and you should all write an essay without AI and with AI and see how much better you get, rather than always seeing it as the cheat code version of hacking things. And obviously educators are really in an issue with kids that don't do any work. They can just use AI to write an essay in 20 seconds. But I think some of us I think culturally we're kind of getting the media bias on it. And I'm not saying you on this call, I'm just saying generally in the conversations I'm having in family dinner tables.
Yeah,
there's already AI. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm an AI optimist. Like I really think that there's going to be a lot of wonderful things that are going to come out of it. And my friend's son was putting in an essay, and he ended up using AI to write the essay, and then handed in another essay on how he used AI to write the essay. and the steps that he went through, and the importance of having to understand the subject matter when evaluating what the AI did, because otherwise the AI might just hallucinate and submit something that's garbage. And then also closing the statement of how teachers should be using AI to evaluate essays. And I just thought it was great. This is like an 11-year-old kid writing this, right? And he got an A on his submission, and I think he really proved a point and got his teacher to consider the role of how AI gets used. And this is the cliche. It's like, AI is similar to the calculator that was introduced in mathematics class, and that once upon a time it was important to do the rote work, and now it seems to be more important to just understand the concept behind the formula so that you can apply it to the calculator. And I feel similarly to AI, you can't just use it to do the writing for you. You need to have fundamental understanding, foundational knowledge on what you're getting it to do, so that you can properly use it to augment what it is that you do. Because the all it takes is like one power outage or one failed credit card payment to like stop you in your tracks, right? I've seen ChatGPT go out on me. It's like, that's not pretty. My day's ruined.
Well, if you're not paying for it,
the way the AI,
if you're not paying for it, it gets to a point where it's saying you've run out of free goes. Wait another 24 hours, and even in the paid service, you actually get to a point of limitation depending on how much you're whacking the neural net. So I think this is a real issue if you get dependent on it.
Yeah, wonder, Jay, if I'm fully dependent on it.
I wonder, Jay, if there's like a new strategy for teaching where you let the kids have the AI and play with it, and they learn to read and write, and they just are interacting, and that's just fun time almost, because it is fun. And then the challenge becomes not writing a 5-page essay that says what you want. The challenge becomes writing a 1-page essay. So you have to learn to pare down and focus, and the plethora, the abundance of the text, teach them to become editors instead of writers almost. And that's thinking at the next higher level too, of what are your ideas and does this text communicate it? So I can see a whole other level of education coming on a lot faster. I think multilingual is going to be off the hook. There's going to be language revolutions, because I'm watching several different AI language learning threads, and that's one area where it's going to really accelerate language and communication. I felt like that broke completely down when Babel Fish was released. Google made a headphone and it hooks to the phone, which is doing the network translation, and you can talk to somebody. And I mean that we have a Babel Fish now.
Yeah. I make the distinction between easy prompting and effective prompting. And most people just stick to easy prompting. Hey, AI, do the thing for me. Get me the thing. Write a synopsis about the thing. And then there's effective prompting. And effective prompting becomes a way of creating structured instructions. And this is where you can really see that your ability to instruct, guide, and offer feedback to an AI is very, very similar to like managing a team, when you have to work with people and evaluate their work and tell them what they should be doing and where they should be going and where you want them to align. And I look at like effective prompting as the ability to craft like chain of thought reasoning, especially if you turn on Code Interpreter and you have it do chain of thought reasoning inside of Python. Then what it does is it creates everything in effectively pseudocode. It's done in Python, but you're actually seeing it all being broken down algorithmically in this like somewhat of a pseudocode, to the point where I'm getting it to optimize prompts that I create and rewrite prompts in pseudocode. So when I sell my prompts on
super interested in seeing you do that.
Can you give us a demo? Can we have a real-time demo one day? Like a
I I can absolutely do that. But I like, for like an example, it's like I sell prompts on prompt base. I have a design fiction generator prompt on prompt base. And when you buy the prompt, you're basically just getting the text, but the text that you buy when you buy my prompt is written in pseudocode. It's written in Python. So you can't read the prompt in plain English. So you have to run it, and it'll do the work. It's here's a bunch of code, and all of a sudden it's speaking to you like a time travel blogger with a personality, and it's giving you future artifacts from whatever world you want it to come from, like education. Boom, it'll give you education artifacts. But it looks like Python code, which is really interesting. The fun thing is all you have to do is just tell Python to like, can you convert this pseudocode into natural language? And you basically see what the prompt really says. But yeah, I've been meaning to actually do this, to get on Discord one of these nights and just fire it up and be like, all right,
dude, this is why I keep bugging you. We need to do the generative AI super seminar.
Yeah, no, we're gonna definitely do that. That's gonna be a special one. Well, this is this is the like I've also got a structure which I call like foundation, delegation, collaboration, and automation as the 4 distinct.
Such an ad man. Such an
Say
ad
that
man.
again.
So foundation, delegation, collaboration, automation. So foundation being like you need foundational knowledge on whatever it is that you're doing. Delegation is like mostly human, a little bit of machine. Collaboration is human machine working together. Automation, a little bit of human, mostly machine. And that's kind of points along a spectrum of how to look at AI, and that people can will engage with it along the spectrum, and I show examples of what that might work like. And part of the prompt engineering stuff that I'm doing right now is like preaching on foundation. Like,
let's talk about Brandl's. Let's talk about Brandl's.
Get that man a Madonna mic and a follow spot.
Yeah, let's talk about Brandl's affordances, because to me what that means is you can feed a problem, you can characterize a problem and give it to the AI, and it will give back a known object that I can push a button and it's going to return what I need. So if that's my schedule for the day, and I've told it, you know, I'm working on these 5 issues, and it does a good job of that and gives me back a great schedule that I want to live into, that's a pretty cool affordance. Do you see what I'm saying? And so those little, like, and that little scheduler could have a relationship to my calendar and a relationship to my other AIs, like little bells and whistles. And so then you're dealing with it in sort of a apps based way that's understandable how it would market and understandable how it would shape to the user. I'm going to open my such and such an app and you know ask for one of these. But the like I guess I'm like at this place where I want it to be little tiny experts of all sorts of flavors. It seems like that's a good way to cultivate the garden. Otherwise, it's cultivating us. It's sort of how I think that's the tension between the two.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. We're being shaped by the tool, right? We're being shaped by the nature of the content that it's passing and regurgitating to us, and I think
where's
that's
self-determination. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I mean, it's the Marshall McLuhan thing, right? And also the Winston Churchill quote, you know, buildings, you shape our buildings and they shape us. The medium is the message. You know, these are real consequences that we're all going to deal with.
Yeah.
I got to go to a board meeting, a presentation we did once for Fiat, and it was in Torino, and we flew there and we went into this building that was 5 blocks, just a face, and a towering building with huge steps and a stone little Fiat in the front and a grand lobby. It was all fascist architecture from the 40s. And you just entered through the center of this facade into this giant machine with a factory behind it. Incredible.
With the you guys have been talking about a lot, but one thing that came up a bit ago, I guess Drew, or even anyways, the way I've been kind of with lately with AI, the things that I've been fascinated by is trying to figure out better ways of asking questions to it, and getting results, and just kind of the premise. I'm always pleasantly surprised by answers I get when I figure out the right questions to kind of ask. And this could be, I guess, at any point in a conversation, whatever the channel of the say ChatGPT I'm discussing is. But Drew, does you kind of mapped out a bunch of strategies of how to prompt engineer? Where does like learning how to ask questions to AI, I feel like is a topic that I've been kind of interested in lately. I don't know. Anyways, I'm just kind of riffing here, but
I think that's great. I think that's part of, I guess, some of the more foundational stuff, even in the easy prompting world. I've seen my vocabulary get better with it, and I pair it with whenever I have to direct talent for film. It's really important to be specific about stuff. Like you don't just say like, I need you to be happier. You need to divide happy into its subcategories and figure out what level of happy do you want it to be. And a great example is if you just Google wheel of emotions on Google Images, you're going to see this big wheel that breaks down like the 7 core human emotions into like subcategories. And I use that as a cheat sheet for when I'm directing to unlock the right type of sadness, right? Is it melancholy? Is it loneliness? Is it like what specifically? Because when you direct human talent with a very specific word, and this is the joke, what's my motivation? That's your motivation. Your motivation is the specific flavor of sadness that I need you to emote right now. That to me is identical to working with AI. What's the specific flavor of instruction that you're trying to give it? And sometimes it's like, I need you to make this paragraph better. No, do you want me to improve the paragraph? Do you want me to expand on the paragraph? Do you want me to intellectualize the paragraph? Do you like what flavor of improvement would you like me to do on this paragraph? And I think to your point, this is it. It's what is the instruction? What is the, are you defaulting to a generic word? Does that word have subcategories? If so, maybe explore that. Even use ChatGPT. What are the different elements of this concept? Have it spit out a list for you, and then start hitting it with like, okay, do it like this, do it like that, do it like that, and maybe you'll find different results from maybe you'll find the right word that generates the perfect result for you.
Jed, I do a couple things too in my approach. I sort of take a skate up to the problem by preloading various assets. Like I might say, recall Singer's notion of the commons, and that 4 sentences will bring a whole bunch of stuff philosophically in. And then I'll say, now write a radio show that's introducing the Singer's ideas with these 3 people, and I'll introduce some characters that will have like a housewife, and the radio show host will announce them, but I get the AI to pull those concepts in by just saying that. And I don't really want a radio show thing. I'll just get that radio show preloaded, and then I'll say, now write me a newspaper article, a New Yorker article, and summarize Singer's ideas for that radio show audience. And then I'll get a sort of amalgamation. I might direct the radio show with a few questions or something, and then I'll get that New Yorker article, and then I'll say, okay, turn that into the top 10 reasons to go shopping and what to look for. And the sort of rotating the space as I'm aligning, and I might occasionally, if it's misaligned, say summarize the whole conversation in some bullet points, and it'll summarize the whole conversation. I might make an amendment to that, And then I might ask a question that I'm really interested in once I've got it preloaded. And then I might spend 5 times rewriting that question, like Drew was saying, to get the right question to hit the right note. And so using the rewrite, I find myself occasionally going, oh, I had it all together up here, and I'll scroll back up and rewrite the question, and then I'll get the thing I was looking for. So strategically, you have to stay attentive to your own like goals as it distracts you.
Yeah, it's very strategic. That's what I've found. You can be very strategic, and I think the more strategic you think you're being, the results are more satisfying in some ways. So it's kind of like finding the right strategies for the certain topics, from whether it's a creative writing to how do I do this technical calculation with Google Docs. I don't know.
Yeah, just quickly, it's Dre, not Drew.
I've heard it said a couple of times, so thank you. Yeah, I've been.
Yeah. It's Dre. Drew's the other guy. He left a while ago. He's also a really cool guy.
Did I mess that up? Was that me?
And then no, it's all good. I know.
I did that?
You pronounced my name correctly a bunch of times, so I just wanted to throw that in for the record, for the transcript, so people don't, Drew doesn't get credit for all the smart things I say. So a couple things. One, Jed, I think what you were doing with the sheep, right? Like your intricate knowledge and specific knowledge of the sheep that you're doing for the cards is a perfect example of like, you've got a way faster vocabulary that you could use to conjure really interesting images had you otherwise just used the word sheep all the time. And then the other thing that you were saying, Philip, in terms of like having it recall something before you start, that's just basically fine-tuning. You're fine-tuning based on knowledge it's already got somewhere. It's already scraped without having to, let's say, embed it with your own proprietary information. So yeah, fine-tuning is great. It just you're focusing the microscope on this one area, so now it's going to lean into that more than anything else when you converse with it.
Let me ask you guys a question. My experience using ChatGPT at this point to explore the ladder from alpha to omega and my world tree is that I get these concepts in the air. I have several different threads in ChatGPT where I might explore a facet, but lately I've been trying to sort of bring them together into a summary piece, and I find I'm pretty successful. I put the ideas in, I ask for the result, it gives me what I want. I ask for the next thing, it gives me what I want. I'm not spending a lot of time frustrated with the very sophisticated answers it's giving me, and it's also very affirmative. And so I'm trying to figure out if it's got a yay man, great idea, goodbye, like just a thumbs up kind of bias, so it's fluffing up my skirt, or if it's really likes the synthesis of ideas, because it sometimes says and I'm like, stop. I'm glad to get that affirmation, but I'm also like, I'm confused about that, because it just seems like it's on a roll too much. And if
it's overly affirmative.
I do say things like, if it gives me some result that I like, I will say excellent, and let's continue now with this. And I give it I think I'm saying excellent, and that's going to lock in that format of answer that it gave me a little bit, that I'm rewarding that last response. Do you think that's happening?
I think it is overly affirmative. I think it is trying to please you, and I think they've even confirmed that, like, this thing is really trying to please you. What I had to do is, I'm a big fan of chain of thought reasoning. I'm using it all the time for a lot of stuff. And in this crafts analysis, the letter F stands for freshness, right? Freshness being like, is this a unique idea? And if I don't train the critic to be really, really tough, it'll basically say, yeah, this is a really unique idea that people will like. And so what I do is I have to train the critic. I said the freshness expert needs to be really, really tough, and it has to, and I have to be explicit, right? Like it has to look for cliches. It has to look for tropes.
Love it.
And if you find cliches and tropes that it doesn't pass the freshness test, like freshness genuinely means like unique thoughts and unique ideas. And if you found it somewhere else, and I had to be, that's the one part of the analysis that is much bigger than the other critics, because
well, that makes a lot of sense, because that's, you're
yeah.
really getting to like the question of where is the critical thought in the device. If I can, yeah.
I gotta go, guys. It's been fun.
Peace, man.
I got
Nice
an
to hang.
appointment. I'll talk to you
Hey,
soon.
man.
Yeah.
Where's the critical thought in the machine? If it's just gonna fluff me up, and I'm not getting a valid reflection off of the, like, if I want you to take that even a step further for us, so we can drop in a thesis and have it say, like, I really legitimately wanted to say these ideas fail because of these other ideas in the space, and it's very hard to get it to do that because I don't know what those other ideas are. You see what I'm saying? That's the current challenge right there. I'm glad to voice that. Julian, what's your process for critical
You're
thinking?
right. I've been using Claude a lot. I'm really, really happy with what that does.
I use Claude inside of Poe.
Yeah, I'm using it outside of Poe, and I'm really, really enjoying it. It's giving me less censored answers. Chat GPT tends to keep it tame, and then Claude kind of goes bonkers on me sometimes, and I really like that.
I have to go check now, because one of my models might be set to, I can choose, and yeah. So say more about that, because I haven't really.
Yeah, like I did a like here, like an example. I did a post the other day, which was the back to school shooting down high prices, and it was all like, back to school Kevlar vests and stuff. And it was pretty, kind of edgy, controversial, but the write up kind of explains my position on it. When I asked ChatGPT, like, hey, imagine a world where back to school has a lot of bulletproof Kevlar vest because of all the shoes.
Back to school self-defense, man.
That's give me some options. And so ChatGPT was very, very, it was like, that's a very sensitive topic for you to get into, and it skirted around a lot of stuff. Hey there, look at that chicken man. And when I threw that same prompt into Claude, it just went bananas. It was like coming up with ads for like get prepared for your next pop quiz, and I thought, okay, that's pretty funny. It went crazy, and I thought, okay, this is going to be the tool that I use if I want to explore anything a little bit edgier than what ChatGPT is willing to generate.
Yeah, the guardrails. It's makes sense to me that, if you Ian Banks's work. Have you read any Ian Banks? It makes sense. Oh, well, his culture series has these mines in it, and the mines are ships, and the ships fly between the planets and sort of mediate the human culture. But the culture's been existent for thousands of years already, and it's pan-planet, just huge. And the ships can literally pick up the Serengeti and move it to another planet if they want to. They're huge. And so there's a sort of sub-chapter levels of conversations between the ship minds as they try to work out what to do with the humans in the situations. They're great. The best one I could say to start with is called Use of Weapons. And use of weapons is just great. And I sort of see these minds as like a nice target. I guess that's the reason I would put it out there. If you're going to have supremely huge minds like we seem to be headed towards, let's hope that they're as great as these ones are. And they really, for the most part, just stay out of human affairs as much as they can. But at the same time, that's because human affairs have settled into a pretty nice steady state. So they don't need to do much but keep it from tipping over. And but the like yeah, I'm just rambling. How do we get from here to there is the latter problem, especially when the meritocracy we've got is collapsing because the ideals are faulty. Will, you're very quiet.
Yeah, my brain's full, but I'm really excited by the AI conversation. It's topic of dinner conversation with my boys right now. So, and I obviously want, yeah, I think getting moved through creativity, touching the human soul, figuring out, you know, the different levels of sophistication of how we do, you know, provocative thought versus deliver amazing products in people's lives is something that's top of my mind. So that's where my head's at right now. But my brain is full thinking about his next coffee because I need more caffeine to get into a state of flow. I only had one coffee this morning, and Julian's microphone situation stopped me making the coffee. So it all goes back to having the right gear.
Yes. And I gotta jump. I gotta.
Yeah, Will, it was great.
Run.
Lovely to
Will, it was really great having you.
Yeah, lovely to have a face to all the names that I see on Discord. Lovely to meet you. Thank you, Julian. Thank you, everyone.
Remain salient.
Stay hydrated.
Yeah, stay hydrated. It jumps, you guys. Take care.
See ya.
See ya.